Alright guys, James here from Butler Farms, back with you again. Gonna do a little part 2 to the canning video that I did a while ago, and I did that for several reasons. First of all, I didn't want the first one to be, or put them together and it be so long that people got bored with it and didn't watch it. Another thing is, for some reason this camera, I don't know what the deal is. I've got to do some research on it. When I get to about 15 minutes, it shuts off. So I'm gonna talk fast. I don't plan on it being that long, but I'm gonna talk fast and tell you what I do. I told you some of the basic things that we do here with the hot water bath canning, some of the basic tools that you need to get started. Can get into this very cheaply. If you're out spending hundreds of dollars to get into canning, somebody's telling you wrong, or either you're setting yourself up for the apocalypse or something. It has taken me years to build up my canning supply, my canning tools, and this is where I started with hot water bath canning and with tomatoes, and then I went into pressure canning other vegetables and the jellies and jams and all that kind of stuff. Jellies and jams usually is where people start. I didn't. I started with tomatoes because that's what we had the most of, and that's what we use a lot of. So let me just talk for a minute about some of the preservation things that we do around here, okay? Now, this year and in years past, when tomatoes really get on me quick and heavy and I don't have time to can all of them, I will take whole round tomatoes, I wash them, I take the stem off of them, I set them in a single layer on a cookie tray, and I put them in the deep freeze. That's it. I will freeze whole tomatoes, and then when they're frozen, I will move them to gallon-sized freezer bags and put them in the deep freeze. I've got an extra deep freeze up the hill, and I stack them in there like firewood. Now, are they going to last as long as canning them? Absolutely not. I got about 6 months to use those, and that's fine. Those will be the ones that we use first. Now, we don't eat a lot of soups and stews and chilies during the summer. It is just so, it's too hot for me here in central Alabama to be eating that kind of thing. I don't want something, you know, warm like that usually. So we eat a lot of vegetable type soups and stews and chilies during the winter, and we use a lot of tomatoes. So those will be the first ones I use. 6 months, it's about mid-July right now, so that gets us past the end of the year. They're not, you know, some people think, well, if I freeze them I can take them out and slice them. No, they're going to turn to mush. But one thing that will happen is when I take them out and run them under some warm water, that skin, I didn't even peel those tomatoes. I just froze them whole after I washed them. That skin will slide right off, and we'll simply just crush them up and put them in the soup and be done with it. So that'll be the first way that we use them, and it saved me a lot of time because I knew that we could use those up in the next 6 months. Now, for longer term storage, and I'm not just talking about through January and February and things like that, but literally for years. I've got tomatoes. Again, the harvest wasn't that great this year because I didn't take care of my business like I should have, whether it was peas or tomatoes or whatever the case may be. And that's okay, because I still have a ton of it left from years ago. Guys, we're using tomatoes, canned tomatoes, when we use up the frozen ones and things like that every year. We're using canned tomatoes that are 4 and 5 years old, and as long as that seal is still good, and I check them regularly, as long as that seal is still good, you don't have to worry about it, okay? It's good to go. So adding what we've added to it this year is just gonna help us a little. Will we get deep into our supply before next summer and I can get some more put up? Yes, but we will make it. All right, so let's get started with this. Like I said, I don't want this to take too terribly long. Now, I showed you in the last video, this is what's left over of my cherry tomatoes. I had them up to about right here yesterday. I've worked them down. I'm doing the same thing with them. I put them in a single layer on a cookie sheet. I freeze them. I put them in gallon freezer bags. They go right in the soup. You know, you see people all the time popping these in their mouth. The skins are not, some skins on tomatoes, I don't care, you know, it's kind of a turn off really because of the texture of it. These little cherry tomatoes, no. I mean, the skin's so thin on them, I throw them right in soups. We cook our soups over hours and hours of time, and they break down. You don't even know they're in there. Okay, so I showed you with the last video the tools that we need, and now let's talk about the process. All right. So several things got to be going on at one time. I will take this and I will put water in it up to about right here. You don't want to fill it to the top, because remember, you're going to add these quart jars, which is going to bring the level up. I put it on the stove. I get it to a low simmer. I don't want it rolling, boiling right now, because I've got some work to do over here. Okay. I also get a pan on the back, just a regular saucepan with some just regular water in it that I'm boiling, that will be used to fill these jars. I also have on the front, I usually put my canner over here, and here I put a big pan of water that I'm going to boil my tomatoes. So I'll take my tomatoes, I'll cut a little X in the flower end of the tomato, and there's a reason for that. When I drop it in this boiling water, before I say that, this is a meat lug that I use during deer season, where we process our meat when we grind and those kind of things. I got it at a restaurant supply store, very cheap. I got a pack of 3 for like 15 bucks, brand new, and it's been cleaned, it's been sanitized. And what I'll do with that, it'll be sitting on the counter over there. I put water and ice, just ice water. Okay, so now let's get to it. So I put my tomatoes with the X in the end, cut in the end. Please don't cut all the way through the tomato. You're just cutting through the skin. I drop it in the boiling water, and within usually a couple of seconds, that skin will start shriveling up. I take a spider or some kind of slotted spoon or something, and I move the tomatoes from that boiling water into there to cool them off quickly. And what happens, you can just take that tomato then and just pull the skin with your hand, and it pulls right off. Okay, I've got a colander in the sink, a big colander, and I cut the tomatoes up into there. And when I've got enough, that's when I'm going to start packing my jars. Now remember, this thing will hold 7 quart jars, and trust me when I tell you, it takes a lot more tomatoes than what you think to fill 7 quart jars. Okay, just telling you, you better have a lot of them ready to go before you start packing them, or you're going to have to keep coming back and forth. Now, the ball book that I talked about in the last video, that's what I use to make sure that what I'm doing is safe for my family. With a quart jar, I will put 2 tablespoons of lemon juice in the bottom before I pack them, and a teaspoon of canning salt. Do not use iodized salt. Okay, if you put iodized salt, you see how clear and pretty that is? If you use iodized salt, it will look like a foggy, cloudy day in there. Safety wise, I don't know, but I know it doesn't look very good to eat. If you ever see somebody use iodized salt, it is not a pretty look. You don't even have to actually use the salt. Now, the lemon juice or citric acid, you must use. Okay, if you're going to hot water bath can them, you have to acidify them. Okay, I choose to use lemon juice. Again, it does not change the flavor of the tomatoes. When you put those tomatoes in something, you will never taste the lemon juice, or at least I never have. Okay, so 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, 1 teaspoon of salt. Now these have been washed in the dishwasher, and they were put in the oven. My oven will go down to 170 degrees. I will turn it down. That's the lowest setting. I will turn it down to that. They stay in there until I move them one at a time over here on this towel. Notice it is not sitting on the counter. What you don't want to do is put hot tomatoes in a cold jar, or a hot jar on a cold counter. It's going to have disastrous results. So I take a hot jar out, I put it on the counter, I put my 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, I put my teaspoon of salt, I pack it with that funnel that I showed you in the last video. I take my hands and push as many in there as I can, and then put some more and push and push and push. That boiling water on the back, I take and fill up to the right head space up here, and then I take that debubbler that I showed you in the other video, and I run it down the sides and kind of push a little bit, and you'll see bubbles coming up everywhere, and that's that air leaving. You've got to get the air out. Then you're going to adjust your headspace, pour more boiling water in here to get it up. And as I said in the other video, I do it a second time and go and debubble. Some people don't worry about it the second time. I do. And I have found it doesn't happen all the time, but I have found a couple of times where it actually a bunch of bubbles came up again, it dropped again. So that way I can fill it on up. Okay, that's when you put your 2-piece top on. Now before you do, a common mistake that people make is they just slap the top on this jar. Well guys, you just put food in that jar, and I guarantee you there is probably residue of some kind around the lip of that jar. You need to take, I just use a wet paper towel. Some people say use vinegar. I don't. I just use a paper towel with hot water, and I take and wipe around the rim of that jar. Then you put your lid on, you put your band on, fingertip tight, and then you will, and of course these have already been done, but very carefully you will take that jar lifter and set that down into the water. And there will be 7 of them in here. Now once you get them all set, you got to start timing them. Okay, that's when you crank the heat up. You want a rolling boil, and of course putting your lid on there is going to help that. When it comes to a rolling boil, that is when your time starts. Now the ball book says to do pints for 40 minutes and quarts for 45 minutes. Again, I don't use pints with tomatoes, so I'm always looking at 45, and it needs to be a rolling boil with you know, I keep an inch of water over the top of my jars. I set the timer for 45 minutes. I check it occasionally, that boiling water that I use to fill up those jars. If it starts getting low or starts getting too close to that top for my liking, I can simply add some of that boiling water to it. Do not add cold water and stop your boil. Okay, it's got to stay at a rolling boil the entire time, not a simmer, and you're not shocking it with cold water. Oh, I'm getting too low. Guys, if you got to add water, you better have some boiling water ready to add to the boiling water so that it doesn't drop that temperature. Okay, if you do, you're gonna have to start all over again, so please don't do that. All right, so after you get through, after the 45 minutes is up, I turn the heat off, take the top off, let it sit for 5 minutes. It's just that easy. And then I take those lifters and I move it over to a towel. Again, do not set that hot jar. First of all, do not grab that with your hands. You will forevermore regret it, I promise you. But set the jar on a towel. Don't set it on that cold counter. I've seen them shatter as soon as it hits that cold counter. But even this is enough to keep that from happening, okay? Leave them alone. You'll hear the ping that all canners love to hear of when this middle part seals. Wonderful sound. And leave them alone. I leave them rings and all till the next day. The next day I'll take my rings off. I'll just twist them off. I will check the seals, make sure you can hear that there's nothing happening there. And then I wash them with warm soapy water because they are going to be a little sticky on the outside. I wash them and then it's time to put them up. Now sometimes, you hear that? Did you hear that when it popped? That one didn't seal. That's why it's still got a ring on it. This one, I just noticed, did not seal correctly. So it's going directly into the refrigerator. We'll use those this weekend in some form or fashion. I'm not going to let them go to waste, but at the same time, they are not safe to store. It did not seal, okay? You could hear that pop of that little bubble. And when I took the ring off of it, the top tried to come off with it too. So that one in the back will go in the refrigerator. These are the last of the ones that I have not already moved to storage. I just left them out here for you to see. And that's pretty much it. The getting started and the cleaning up to me is the worst part. It takes long. I enjoy the actual canning part, and I love to hear that ping when they actually seal. I will stay in the room just long enough to start hearing that, and it'll start happening 5-10 minutes after you set them on that towel. But that's pretty much it, guys. It's not, I guess it is rocket science to a certain extent, but it's not hard to do, and you can get into the space easily. You can get into it cheaply. To me, if somebody was asking, okay, where do I need to start? Do I need to go out and buy a pressure canner? I wouldn't. I would start with something that you could hot water bath can to kind of get the feel of it and kind of get the flow of it. A lot of the pressure canning stuff is pretty much the same as far as preparation and stuff goes. But still, until you get your feet wet in it, start with something simple. We all got to start somewhere. This is where I started with my mother growing up, and I've built from there and learned from good people, not only in the community, but also good YouTube channels like Harmon Homestead, Deep South Homestead. I've watched those canning videos until I've worn them slap out. But anyway, I'm gonna leave it there. Good luck with your harvest this year. Preserve some of it so that when it gets cold this winter, you can eat you a good bowl of vegetable soup and think, yep, I grew that, and a wonderful feeling. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share. Let's keep this channel growing and keep it going. And I will say God bless you, and see you next time. This is James from Butler Farms.